In this episode, I'm talking to Carole Jean Whittington. She is the Chief Wellbeing Officer at Whittington Wellbeing and a leading expert in autistic burnout for women. With 40 plus years of lived experience as an autistic woman navigating chronic stress and burnout, she guides autistic women and their supporters to design joyful, burnout-free lives. We had a really, really great conversation. Both of us were in tears at one point. We've been talking about the early signs of burnout and how it can even start from the age of 4, how trauma is linked, and what masking does to our nervous system, to our bodies when we are an ADHDer, an autistic person, as Carole likes to say, an neurodistinct person, neurospicy. She talks through the different scale on her neurospicy scale and the internal and external signs of burnout. Really great episode. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for tuning in to the Calm Your Nervous System podcast, where you will learn to regulate your nervous system, not just calm it. I'm your host, Jenny Adams, and I'm a somatic coach who has recovered from debilitating ME and trauma. Alongside my guest experts, I'm here to share tips, stories, and debunk jargon, what is somatics anyway, about how you can regulate your nervous system so you don't have to live with chronic illness, burnout, or debilitating trauma for the rest of your life. A joyful life is possible. Hi, Carole Jean. Thank you so much for coming on the Calm Your Nervous System podcast. It's great to have you here all the way from Alabama?
Alabama, yes, here in the US.
Nice. Well, thank you. Yes, thank you so much for coming on. And I'm really excited for us to, nerd out, see where our neurospicy brains go with all the burnout, all the stuff. So yeah, thank you first of all for coming on. And I'd love to hear a little bit about what it is you do and why.
What it is that I do and why. That is a loaded question to ask an autistic woman. You know this, right?
Answer however you want.
Lead and I will follow. Then I can info dump. Right?
Yeah, 45 minutes.
No. I'm just teasing. I'm Carole Jean Whittington, and I am a late identified autistic ADHD woman, and I have co-occurring health conditions. So I am a trifecta patient. I have POTS, MCAS, and hypermobility, which is exceptionally prevalent within our population. And it's one of the most unidentified elements. And it's something that usually comes out after identification as you start to dive into, let me go talk to and follow some autistic accounts, and let me go find some ADHD people out there and find out what's going on and what I need to know. And you start to unpack all of these things. Number one, you learn about masking. Number two, you learn about autistic burnout, right? Number three, you start to look at all of the ways that, oh my gosh, as I look back on my life, these are all the things that I missed. These are all the things that were so hard. These were the things that were really heartbreaking. These were the things that, oh my gosh, if I'd only known, then XYZ. Or if I'd have known this, then this might not have happened. Because one of the other things that so many of us talk about and relate to one another around is how trauma shows up for us. And it isn't always this big screaming, big horrific thing. Sometimes for a lot of us, it is this layering of micro traumas throughout our life. From the simplest statement that someone else might say is completely benign, like, you can't possibly be hurt by that light. Those clothes can't make you feel physical pain. They're clothes. And that invalidation of your experience. I see you laughing. You're like,
I'm laughing because I've literally just ripped a label out of my t-shirt because I'm like, this is irritating me.
Same. I did the
no
same
scissors.
thing.
I'm like, just take the bastard out.
Yes. And it's all of those things that lead to this place, and especially in late identified life. This happens to folks who even knew early, but it's this, I've recognized I'm learning these things, and as I start to discover more about what it means to be autistic and what does that mean for me, so many of us stand in this place that, number one, we're burnt out AF. You're probably a ghost pepper level 5 where you're so hot you're not on my spicy scale. Your body starts to shut down in places. You are trying to pull resources from the tank that no longer has anything, and it's sort of collapsing in on itself at this point because there's nothing else to pull from, but we keep trying. I define burnout in the autistic burnout in this way. We have been driving the car with the check engine light on for decades. And then when the car finally dies, we get out and start pushing the dang thing. Right?
Yeah.
But that leaves us in this place, especially when we've had a lot of health issues and our nervous systems have been so dysregulated for the majority of our life. And the on-ramp to autistic burnout in my research shows it begins as early as age 4 years old. The first burnout hits for autistic people between ages 6 and 10. This is what my research over the last 4.5 years has shown.
Okay.
And most of us don't even realize it because what burnout is defined as in big population, right? Neurodominant culture is, you feel disconnected from work. You need a little extra sleep. You're feeling a little tired. You might be a little, cranky, or you may have a little brain fog here and there. That is only scratching the surface for us. My research shows that it goes 9 layers deep for us, including our sensory system. Our communication can be impacted for those of us who have alexithymia. There's emotional impacts. There can be situational temporary mutism. And all of this is dysregulating our nervous systems, which leads us to this place of autoimmune challenges, of all kinds of co-occurring health conditions that show up. But the biggest thing is that we are left standing here in late identified life as we start to unlayer these things. And we look in the mirror one day and we do not know who is being reflected back at us. We don't know who we are. And it is this place where it is a massive identity crisis, number one. And then we are left with trying to figure out who we are in the process. And to discover that process, to start that self-discovery process, requires us a huge amount of energy and resources. And if you're in burnout, it makes it difficult to do that. So what I do, in the very long roundabout answer here to what you asked me, is I meet people where they are in that moment of, I am so damn tired and I don't know who the hell I am, but I want to. I want to feel better and I want to know who I am. And I want to love me. And sometimes it's just like, I just want to tolerate me, because we don't start out wanting to even like or love ourselves. We're just like, I just want to hold space for myself and not like hate me.
Yeah. Wow. And thank you for that. The beautiful way you put that. And what's popping into my head is like an analogy that I use with a lot of my clients is, you don't turn up to the base of Mount Everest and just say, I'm going to climb to the top today. Because it's like, that is just, no, I can't do that. I've got no training. Like, that's just impossible. I'm not even going to bother. And it's taking those little steps towards, okay, well, maybe one day I could train towards doing it, but I need to just put one foot in front of the other right now. And I know from my own personal experience of chronic illness hit me first before I realized I had ADHD, that I was in that place of, well, I can't love everything is just so much and so messy, and I'm just exhausted, and just everything feels toxic. There's no one here supporting me. Work's a mess. I've got no much, just chaos. Just, oh my God, where do I start? And you mentioned that the spicy scale, and I know you've got this wonderful quiz on your website as well. So can you tell us a little bit more about, what is the scale and those kind of steps of burnout? You mentioned 4 years old.
It is insidious. So I have the top 20 warning signs you might be in autistic burnout. And that is a really great resource. And it's on my website. It's a good place to start. And it goes into the layers. When I talked about those 9 layers deep, this goes into those 9 layers deep. One of the biggest differentiating factors between autistic burnout and your general population burnout is that we lose skills and abilities. We lose skills and abilities to the point that if you do not restore and recover from burnout, they are permanently lost.
Wow. So can you give us some examples of that and why?
Yes.
Why is that?
There is a lot of reasons as to why, but specifically our neurodistinct brains and bodies, because we are not just neurology, we are physiology, and the two cannot be separated. Mm-hmm. And so often the medical deficit approach, which I find horrific, which does not work because it is so not right, is not taking us into account as a whole being, as a holistic person. And when we're talking about a loss of skills and abilities, there's a reason why. And when the on-ramp to burnout is beginning as early as age 4, we are looking at a constant drain of energy. And that constant drain of energy impacts our executive function. That's how we think about and plan. How do we get from point A to point D, right? Mm-hmm. And how do we think about all the things in between to get from A to D? And then we have cognitive loadability. How many things are we able to process and understand at one time? And when we are in an energy deficit, when we do not have enough rest, and in burnout, the number one first thing to go offline is your sleep. And if you're also neurodistinct, if you're autistic, ADHD, there are already biochemical and physiological differences in how we sleep, the chemicals that we process, from cortisol to melatonin. And cortisol gets the bad rap as the stress hormone, but it is a crucial element in our sleep-wake cycle. And when we are constantly, and you talk about this is something you are very well aware of, and people who come to talk to you about your nervous system regulation, when we talk about the impact of the chemical of cortisol in our body for long periods of time at high elevated levels, how is that impacting our nervous system? So from an early age, our nervous system is being dysregulated and disrupted without restoration. And so all of those things impact how we process information. And so the longer it's happening and the greater degree to which it is happening and occurring, what happens is our brain goes, this is more than I can do. I'm going to narrow in and I'm going to operate in this very small window because it's all I have left. Because you've literally burning out those connections.
Wow. That's huge, and that's the first time I've heard that as well. So those particular kind of skills and abilities, then, can they come back? I know we are very neuroplastic.
Yes,
if we recover from burnout.
Yes. And that is one of the most beautiful things that I discovered, number one, for myself. And then I have also been able to discover this through the work that I do with my clients, because there's very limited research. Number one, there's very limited research being run by autistic researchers. And so the lens on it is a neurotypical person trying to understand and evaluate something that they do not know. And so when we look at research from an autistic researcher standpoint, there's a very limited amount. There's some research out there. And when I first read this, probably 5-6 years ago, it scared me to death, because the research said, as an autistic person, when you experience burnout, you lose skills and abilities and you will not ever get them back. And I looked at that research and I went, well, number one, you're not asking a lot of the right questions. And number two, you're not looking at and considering that restoration and full recovery is possible. What I learned after being in decades. So my very first burnout was at the age of 6. And it started with one of the most prevalent number one warning signs that an autistic child is entering and experiencing burnout, and that is through an expression of suicidal ideation.
Wow.
We have to normalize and talk about that. Yes. Wow. And it's very common. Okay. I hear it more and more. It is one of the most prevalent warning signs. And most parents. So number one, I've been the child who has said that to their parent. And I've also been the parent whose child has said that to them. It is heartbreaking on both sides of the table. But you must understand what that really means feelings when your child says this to you, like, I no longer want to be here. And a lot of times the response from adults and professionals is, oh my gosh, we have to put this care plan in place and there's something wrong. And it's like, yes, but it's not what you think it is. It is exhaustion. It is a nervous system that is fried and maxed out at its capacity and is not recovering. It's your sensory overwhelm because we do not have the same amount of neural pruning. So we have more connections. It's why sometimes so many of us take a little longer to process things. You know, when we look at a functional magnetic resonance imaging map of the human brain and we put a neurotypical brain versus an autistic brain, and we give them the same task to perform, it's very interesting. The neurotypical brain lights up in, let's just say, 3 to 4 areas, and they're kind of concentrated and they are executing this task. The same exact task, we go over here and we look at this beautifully, wonderfully wired, sparkly brain that I love, and it's lighting up in 6 or 7 different areas in a larger area of each part of the brain, and including parts of the brain that the neurotypical brain does not include to process this information. It's why that we are out of the box thinkers. It's why that we see these solutions. It's why we have these beautiful, innovative way of approaching life. Yet that is the same thing. Employers say, oh, we want this, this, and this. And I've just described all the beautiful things that our brains do. However, we don't want you to do it in this way because it's weird. You got to do it the way you got to fit in this box to be and do it that way, right? And it's that messaging that starts so early of, why would you do it that way? Why are you overthinking this? How many times have we heard somebody tell us that? Stop overthinking this. It's like, are you kidding me? I thought gymnastics is my go-to, right? That is how my brain processes. But all of these things lead to 5 different levels of burnout on the spicy scale. So we have look, serious and heavy is what got you into burnout in the first place. So one of the top 5 restorative elements of an optimum steady state and well-being is play, joy, laughter, and fun. So I kind of made this fun, right? So we got a spicy pepper scale, and poblano pepper level 1 is where you're just entering burnout. You got just a tad, a little freckle of heat, right? Then we have the jalapeno pepper level 2, where things are starting to impact in different areas. And we look at those 9 impact areas as, how does your communication impacted? Because it is. How is your sensory system impacted? How is your sleep impacted? You know, we look at all of these different layers that aren't included in how Matchlock looks at it, or Copenhagen or Oppenheimer. And those are burnout inventories that are pretty gold standard. And so we look at those, and then we've got like number 3, cayenne pepper level 3. That's where I find most people in a 3 or a 4. So then we have habanero level 4. And what was interesting is from 2003 to 2004, I saw an uptick at the end of 2004 in the degree of burnout people were experiencing. And those who had reevaluated themselves from 6 months prior had found that they had gone into a deeper degree of burnout without any intervention. And that was a result of a lot of the things happening in our world: economic and financial stress, political uncertainty. And as we move into these different levels, a lot of times, if we have from the age of 4 started to enter this higher degree of stress and demand and dysregulation of our nervous system, it becomes our set point. It becomes our norm. That's just how life feels for me at a 3. And I have something that is really important to understand. So I'll finish the level. So 4 is the habanero pepper. That you're getting pretty hot. This is like when you're flaming, it's like the dog scooting its butt across the carpet. Okay. That's the bit. That is this one.
Love that image.
Right. I'm just going to tell you. And you're still operating. You're still driving the car with the check engine light on. Okay. Then we have ghost pepper level 5. This is where you're so hot you're not. Things start to shut down. And here's where it's interesting. Autistic women more than autistic men. And I can't say that it does include non-binary and LGBTQ, but I'm just going to specifically say autistic women versus autistic men, just for this highlight here. As a ghost pepper level 5, it's kind of like when men get sick, they got a runny nose and the whole world is coming to an end. It's kind of like that in burnout too. When men hit 5, it's the world is ending and it's cataclysmic. Autistic women, the car has died with the check engine light on, and you're in your high heels pushing the dang thing. That is your ghost pepper level 5 for so many
Having
of
a Zoom
us.
meeting at the same time.
Yes. And then reading the manual
I'm
going,
fine.
right? And then you're like, oh, there's a manual for the car? Okay. And you start reading the manual for the car, and it goes, oh, you're supposed to change the oil every 6 months. And you're like, wait, nobody ever told me that. I didn't know that was the rule. I follow the rules. And so it's that point, and it's usually so far past the point that you should have stopped to take care of yourself, that autistic women, we do not feel safe to stop. We are sharks for a reason, because the world does not feel safe, and we do not feel safe within ourselves. And so the number one biggest contributing factor to burnout is a lack of internal emotional safety and self-trust. And that starts at age 4 with that messaging that we receive from the world saying, why are you doing it that way? It can't possibly hurt you. Why are you crying? Don't wear your heart on your sleeve. That little girl said the same thing to everybody else in the group, and you're the only one crying. Why did it hurt your feelings? Suck it up, buttercup. And all of that says, my experience, my thoughts, my ideas, the way that I do things, the way that I feel things is wrong. It's not safe. So I'm going to figure out what everybody else is doing, and I'm going to begin to mask. And we don't just pick one mask. We have so many masks that we could fill a closet. We can't close the door on the closet, and we are switching between those masks so quickly in one engagement. We are mentally, physically, emotionally exhausted. Our bandwidth for processing information is exhausted because we are so busy living externally, trying to stay safe. And so that puts us in this constant state of like a level 3, level 4 for our norm. And so when life lifes as it does, something comes in and we get more stress and we have less resources to pull from. And so then we're going, oh, I'm in burnout or I'm stressed, right? We may not even use the words burnout because most of the time we don't even know we're in burnout. I'm feeling a little stressed, right? And so you do that for a little bit and then life resolves as it does. And so you come back down and you're like, oh, I'm out of burnout. I'm not stressed anymore, but you're still at a level 3 because that's your norm. Mm-hmm. That's the restoration illusion trap. And so I fell into this trap myself, and I have yet to meet someone who has not fallen into that trap.
Say the trap again.
Restoration illusion trap. It's an illusion. So we've been at a 3 for so long that it's normal. So that when we move into a 4 or 5, that to us is stress. And so when things move back down to our quote unquote norm and we're still in a 3, but don't know it, we think we're out of it. And we think that we're just not smart enough to figure it out. We just don't have the same reserves. We're just not adulting the way everybody else does. And life is hard and it sucks. But there's a whole nother world on the other side of the spicy pepper.
Oh, yes. And I know from myself and clients I've worked with, there's that in this place, there's almost this feeling or belief of I'm too much, yet I'm not enough. And I'm doing so much. I'm trying so fucking hard. And the world is just
You're doing yourself to death.
You're just not, just stop.
Literally.
Yeah. Just too much. Don't wind it down a little bit. Or you need to do more. And it's like, I just can't win. I just, ugh. And then our body just stops. And that was certainly the case for me. And it turned into years in a wheelchair. And something you said earlier about, and this story is so common, unfortunately. Something you said earlier about the doctors or the medical community, can't remember who, having a foggy day today, that, you can't get out of this. Oh, I think it was the, once you've lost those skills and abilities, that's it, they're gone for life. And I remember being told, this is your life. You're just going to be in a wheelchair for good. and I was told this in my early 20s. No consideration of how that might land or how to manage that. Just, here's a big pile of shit. Out you go. Deal with it. So
you've managed this far. You'll figure it out.
And this is why we are having this conversation as well, because it can be that place. But look at where we both are, and it's not just us. How many people have you supported, talked to, worked with, been around that have
Thousands.
Gotten over that? So those sort of symptoms, and actually, could you talk a little bit about what some of those early symptoms of burnout could be? Yeah. And then I'll ask you again in a minute about, what do we do to get out of it?
Some of the early signs to pay attention to. Do you notice that there are places in your day where you want to cry? Or maybe you do cry. Maybe you go to the bathroom. Maybe you go in your room, or you're sitting in your car before you go in the house and you're just crying. Or you find these moments where you're just furious out of nowhere. Mm. Sometimes those are the things that we start to pay attention to, because burnout happens in two places. Burnout occurs internally and burnout occurs externally. Here's where I help people with the unveiling method. The majority of us recognize burnout or start to become aware of it internally. Like how we're thinking, how we're feeling. Like if you notice you have more sinus infections or UTIs, especially if you're a woman and you've got a lot of bladder infections, that is a sign that you might be in burnout, right? If everything in your dang body hurts and you feel like from the top of your head to your toes, all your joints ache, and you just can't seem to lose weight, or you're craving a lot of different foods that normally maybe you wouldn't eat, those are some things to pay attention to, because our body is the biggest feedback system we have. And that is where burnout shows up second. You're already in burnout by the time you've recognized these things. Mm-hmm. But there's a place externally where burnout shows up first. And I teach people how to recognize the external places that burnout gives us these warning signs, these signposts, as I call them, so that we can catch it and be able to implement things that support us so that we don't have that internal experience where burnout is already happening and it's too late. Mm-hmm. One of the things is you might have difficulty. Now, this is one of the ones that usually blows people's mind when I say there. It's like, oh my God, I never knew that this was part of burnout. If you used to read and you loved to read and it was no big deal, and I'm also dyslexic, so, I still love to read. But all of a sudden, I couldn't read. I could not read something other than a couple of sentences. I found it even difficult to read a magazine article. Listening became challenging. So I have an auditory processing delay, and I didn't know that until years after my autism identification. All of those layers come out. So things like auditory processing delay got worse. It got harder. I couldn't even listen to a book if I wanted to. So our eyes, there is a stress response that we experience in our acuity. So you can also have vision loss in your acuity, like your 20/20, but you can also have vision challenges. So that's how your brain processes what you see. So one of the early warning signs can also be that you lose your balance, that you are falling more often, or you're running into the door frame. And if you're also dyspraxic, and this is something that happens to you on the regular, like me, it gets worse. And you find that it feels like the room is always spinning and you're walking sideways trying to hold everything up. That is an autistic burnout warning sign.
And for those of us that also have that wonderful trifecta of the hypermobility and POTS and a neurodistinction as well, I mean, proprioception is not our strong suit anyway. And I know, if I get bruised, which happens a lot, they're there for a while and they just turn up in random places. And it's interesting you say about those kind of earlier signs, because I can recognize at certain times of my life, I'm like, I am just walking into doors more often. Why am I just bashing into things and dropping things? And just noticing those symptoms. So, and that's really fascinating. You mentioned the quite distinct internal and external symptoms of burnout. And from my own personal experience and from what I've noticed in my clients as well, is those internal signals haven't always been heard necessarily until they're like at alarm bell screams.
Interoception.
Yeah. So, if you asked me more 10 plus years ago, how are you? How are your stress levels? I'm like, I'm okay. Again, probably operating at a 3 or a 4.
You're pushing the car.
Exactly. But I didn't know that at the time. I'm like, well, yeah, I get colds a lot. I'm generally ill from kind of September to March, on and off. I catch everything going. Yes, I feel like I've been thrown down the stairs after any kind of physical exertion. I'm spending a lot of energy not crying. And now I just cry all the time because I just let it out. I'm a sensitive person. I will cry if I want to, if it's here.
It is a steaming tea kettle. It is the release valve. Best thing we can do for ourselves.
Exactly. But those symptoms I look back on now and I'm like, fuck, how?
Mm-hmm.
How was I not listening? But it was the norm.
Yeah. Well, how did we not listen? That is an excellent question, Jenny. And there's several reasons, especially for those of us who are neurodistinct. And it comes from a lot of different layers. One is those of us who are alexithymic. So if you're autistic or ADHD, the prevalence of you also being alexithymic is very high. So alexithymia is not the ability to recognize that you have emotions, right? Because we know we feel them. We feel our physical feelings in our body first, right? So we can have all of these feelings and they're really big. And when we're little, they are really big and they feel scary in our body. Even if it's good stuff, alexithymia is you can feel all of this, but describing it and transcribing it into language in your mind that you can understand for yourself and then be able to express or share with other people. That disconnect between those two is alexithymia. And for so many of us, there are, like I mentioned earlier, there's this layer of trauma. And when the messaging has been from an early age that you're wrong, the way that you think, feel, or perceive is not possible because other people around you don't experience it, you then start to push down and ignore your body because it's wrong. It's not receiving the right signals, apparently, because everybody around me tells me it's weird, wrong, or broken. So I'm just not going to trust it and I'm going to shut it off. And so we end up as adults who do not have the skills that other people have honed by listening to their bodies because our bodies weren't safe. We couldn't trust it. And if we have a difficulty transcribing maybe what we felt into an emotion in our mind where we can discern whether it's safe or not, we just automatically default to nothing is safe. And you wonder why we're in burnout. That's a lot of thought energy.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's why.
Yes. And this is just bringing up something that happened to me recently and a really big opportunity to shut down into shame and mask. And it was some information that I learned about an event that happened when I was in a very bad place in my life. There was a night out. I had drunk too much and something may or may not have happened to me. And I learned this news and it just set me off. And I could feel, because we were out at a family meal, I could feel this, even now I can feel it a little bit, this energy. Like, I need to let this out. Like, this hurts. And I could sense that initial reaction to just push it down. Don't spoil this event. Instead, I went to the toilets and I just collapsed on the floor and sobbed. And I texted my mum and I said, can you come up to the toilets? I'm upset. And I told her what had happened. And I heard the messaging of, it was a long time ago, Jen. Don't worry about it. Like, why are you reacting so much? You don't know what happened. You're only this upset because of this information you've learned. And only the week before, I'd had a call with one of my coaches, and we talked a lot about shame and bringing shame out of the darkness and out of the shadows. And I could see that this was one of these events that it could feel extremely shameful of, well, you shouldn't have drunk so much. You shouldn't have done this. And, the victim blaming, and that, was a whole other story we could go down. But it was this moment of, no, I'm feeling my stuff. I'm asking for support. And I'm not going to be told I'm wrong. I'm feeling this. This isn't going anywhere. And I then leaned into my wonderful support system who understood. And they gave me the space to verbally process, to cry, to listen, to reflect that. And it's those moments where someone else might go, oh, she's just overreacting to something. It was years ago. And out of their brain. To me, that was a very intensely emotional week of, I don't know what has happened and this is really scary and I'm feeling all this stuff. And I now have the tools and the support, and the mask has lifted to say this is okay to actually be with and process, and I'm strong enough to do so now. And I think that can be, yes, it was intense, but this is also what's on the other side of burnout, is when these things come up in life, we know how to deal with them. We're strong enough. And if I can turn this into a question then, what are some of the first steps when people are recognizing they're there and this has been their norm for most of their life? In your words, in your work, how do you start to unpick from that place?
First, I want to pause and just honor what you just shared.
Thank you.
Thank you. And you have no idea what you just gifted me. The universe never brings us into a conversation that it's not for a purpose. I had something very similar happen to me last Thursday.
Okay, so we need a moment, don't we, to feel
We
this?
We do.
Sending you a hug from across the ocean.
I'm sending you one too, my heart to yours.
Oh, I've just had my lashes done as well and been told not to cry. We'll get them wet.
Right, here we go.
So let's allow ourselves a moment.
But what you just shared and the similar experience that I had just recently, and you could have just been taking my words. You just took my heart and my words and my experience and you just shared them.
Wow. Oof.
It was almost the same thing. And it hit out of nowhere. But I allowed myself to feel it. I gave myself grace and compassion. And I got compassionately curious and I said, let's look at this, because I asked for it. I said, I feel like the reason that I'm having some of these weight issues, I have worked so hard. I got all this weight off and I felt so good and I've done so much to help my physical health. Something's not still clicking because I'm gaining weight back and I don't understand because I'm not doing a whole lot different. What's going on? And I felt like there's this block in sort of my sacral area, right? My sacral energy center. And I know what that correlates to. And some of the work that I do correlates and uses our body specifically to help us identify those nourishment keys, the things that we need, the things that are draining our energy most. And that's one of the steps to get out of burnout. But it was this place that for the first time in my life, I felt safe to feel the big, scary, hairy feelings. And I felt strong enough and I trust myself enough now. And I have emotional safety within myself and with the people in my life and my intimate relationships that I could sit in that uncomfortable feeling. And yeah, the shame storm came in, and the self-blaming and the judging. And then I went, whoa, hold it. That is not what we do around here anymore. I get why my darling protective self came in for that. And I went, that's not how we do this. And it's safe for us to feel this. And then I processed and allowed my physical body to process through those emotions and those memories and those things that were coming back, because I'm finally in a place where I have the capacity, the energy, and the ability to process them. And I can do them in a healthy way. And I reached out and I said, I need support. And I have not ever in my life ever had something really big, scary, that I didn't think that I had to first figure it out for myself. And I was too terrified to share with anybody else because I was so scared of being judged and being thought of as not strong enough, that in this place to be able to say, I don't have to be strong enough, and it is okay. And it is absolutely loving for me to ask you to support me right now. And as the first step to beginning to even allow space for you to start in a gentle way to allow yourself to feel and experience some of the things, to even reconnect with your body, sometimes for the first time in your conscious life. It starts with the most powerful, super simple, stupid thing in the whole wide world. It is your breath. How many of us catch ourselves holding our breath throughout the day? All of a sudden, you're just like concentrating, you're writing something, you're like, when is the last time you really took a full, deep breath where your abdomen and your rib cage in a 360 fully expand and you take in as much air as you possibly can?
Can we just do that for a moment then?
Yes.
So anyone listening, please breathe with us.
Sit comfortable, however you are. Doesn't matter. Shake your hands out if you need to. Roll your shoulders. Open and close your jaw. Roll your neck. Whatever feels good for you. You can inhale through your nose or your mouth. If you're not stuffed up and congested, I recommend your nose, because it actually does engage and help regulate some of the biggest nerves in your body through your nose. So take a big inhale, big, deep, feel your ribs cage expand all the way around and your abdomen expand. Inhale deep. As you hold it, drop your shoulders, kind of relax into this hold. Open and close your jaw. And as you exhale, I want you to make a sound. I want you to be heard. Push out 2 breaths. Now take a full inhale. Drop your shoulders, relax into that hold, and exhale with a sigh. As you do, just relax and loosen and soften your body just a little bit more. And return to your natural breath.
Oh, well, that was needed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it's that simple. I teach rapid recharging, and it is, how do we engage in the 7 forms of rest other than sleep? Because in burnout, it's the first thing to get disrupted. It's the last thing to come back into alignment. If we're in a ghost pepper level 5, how do we even start to get out of burnout if we're so dang tired we cannot even lift our hand to feed ourselves? I have been so burnt out that my body shut down and I was in a wheelchair. And I was in the bed with 2 small children and a husband who was fighting in Iraq overseas, and I couldn't even lift my hand to feed myself. And I was terrified. And I had that dark night of the soul where I slid out of the bed and I was face down on the cold hardwood floor in a February night. And I cried to the point that no words would come out, no sound, no tears. And I simply laid there. And in that quiet moment, I thought to myself, I'm either going to be here in the morning or I'm not, because I can't keep living like this. And I can't be this person. It can't be the mom she wants to be. It can't be the wife, the person that she wants to be in the world. because I don't feel like I am living the life I was meant to. And in that moment, there was this small spark of hope. And it was just enough that I said, I'm going to figure this out because I know I'm meant for more. Mm. If you are listening to this and you have felt that way, you are meant for more. There is hope. Getting out of burnout is possible. Restoring and healing your physical body after decades of horrific burnout and trauma and co-occurring health conditions, it is possible. It took me 2.5 years to get out of that wheelchair, to be able to have energy and sustainable energy. And it begins with your breath, and it begins with what you put in your mouth, because there are different forms of energy. And one of the simplest ways is to look at what is your blood sugar? How are you burning glucose versus fat, which is long-term and sustainable? For so many of us who are autistic, we have a whole lot of sensitive systems. We have MCAS, so our histamines, our immune system is over-responding. And being able to find ways to regulate those through what we have control over. And sometimes we feel so out of control in burnout. Being able to control something is an anchor, a lifeline. You can control your breath, and you can control where you begin to nourish yourself and how.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing those, because they are just the way you've put everything, and the simplicity of, just start with the basics. And, from a nervous system perspective as well, when we're in this, everything just feels too much. Where do I start? And as you have just wonderfully put, breath, what are you eating? And today I'm on the edge. I know I need a rest. And I have just was walking to my office and was like, I'm a bit shaky. I need some food. And the old me would go for something sugary and carby. And I've got a pot of fruit on my desk, and I've just been drinking orange juice, which, yes, it might be a bit of a sugar spike, but I'm like, I just want something fresh. And I'm nourishing my body with that rather than like a chocolate bar or a bag of crisps or a donut or something like that. So, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom. I feel like we could talk for hours.
Me too.
Thank you so much. And I hope people have got some really, really good information from today. And if anyone wants to hear more from you, where can they find you? I think you've got a book coming out soon. Tell us more.
Do. You can check out all of the resources and get started at whittingtonwellbeing.com. You can take the masking styles quiz, learn what your masking style is. And if you're an integrated masker and you're using all the mask, know that, because that's one of the biggest contributing factors to burnout. And it's a good thing to know. You can also take the spicy pepper burnout quiz, because you can't begin to get out of burnout if you don't know where you are right now. This is setting your GPS coordinates so that you then can take strategic actions with a framework, with a step-by-step process based on where you are, how you get out. Because it's different for every person. It's different for every spicy pepper level and the degree of heat you have within your pepper level. And I do that within a free workshop that I offer. All of these resources are available. If you love to listen, I have Beyond Chronic Burnout podcast. So please join me over there. We have a wonderful community. And if you want to know more about how to regulate your nervous system, be sure and check out Whittington Wellbeing on YouTube. And we have some fantastic, quick 5-minute recharge sessions where you can start with your breath and just begin to experience what it feels like for you and how you can begin to take control of how you determine what your energy is.
Thank you so much for sharing. And we will put all of this in the show notes as well. So yeah, thank you again. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Jenny.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Calm Your Nervous System. I hope you found the conversation as interesting as I did. If you would like to start healing your nervous system, I have a free energy diary available just for podcast listeners, which will really help you see your blind spots about how you're spending your time and your energy. Find it at jennyadamscoach.co.uk/podcast. Find out more about me and somatic coaching in the show notes below. See you next time.